The Rundown with Carrie Saldo podcast is funded by Armbrook Village Senior Living in Westfield, offering assisted living and compass memory support with evidence-based treatment for those with memory loss. More at armbrookvillage.com.
This is The Rundown, your weekly news and review from Western Mass. I'm Carrie Saldo. Good morning. It's Friday, January 10th, 2025. And man, is it cold outside. But no worries. We're here to help you fire up your brain cells. Email us your incandescent thoughts, questions, comments, therundown@nepm.org. Will things get heated amongst our rundowners as we delve into some of the biggest stories from the 413? I don't know. We'll find out. Joining us this morning is NEPM News Director Sam Hudzig.
Hey there, Carrie.
Reporter Emeritus Paul Tuthill.
Good morning, everybody.
And on the phone, Western Mass Politics and Insight Editor-in-Chief Matt Safransky.
Good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for being here, guys. Later in the show, two stories related to the environment, a proposed citywide ban of fossil fuels in Northampton, plus conservation land 2,400 acres to be exact, and why there's still no help for 413 residents with homes that are sitting on faulty concrete. But first, the headline on this story was that videos released of Hampden County Sheriff Nick Cocchi's OUI arrest. This story was first reported by Greta Yoakum of the Springfield Republican newspaper this week, and she wrote, quote, "State police on Tuesday released roughly 2 hours of video in response to a records request by the Republican for materials related to Sheriff Nick Cocchi's September 21st, 2024 arrest on a drunk driving charge. The released footage from several troopers' body and cruiser cameras sheds light on the circumstances of Cocchi's arrest, including his resistance to sobriety tests requested by state police, his misrepresentation about where he'd lost a tire, and also whether he had been driving." I want to play some audio from part of that video from the Republican. You'll hear first Massachusetts State Police Lieutenant Corey Mackey and then Sheriff Cocchi.
Sir, I understand you are the sheriff. I respect that immensely. But right now I'm conducting an investigation, okay? I need you to stay here and follow the directions,
100%.
okay? All right?
You can't pop the tire, huh?
What's that?
You can't pop a tire?
You're not going to be able to put a tire on that rim anyways. That rim is completely and utterly destroyed.
Cocchi did go on to pay for the damage to that state-owned vehicle, and then in terms of the OUI charge, he got a year of probation after pleading to facts sufficient to be found guilty. But reaction to what you saw and heard on that, I'll start with you, Sam.
Yeah, I mean, I thought the video was really interesting because when Cocchi first walks up, it's very clear he thinks this isn't going to be a thing, that he's going to be able to. He's going to be able to have this person he's called over from the sheriff's department take care of this car, and he's gonna move on. But then, as the video goes on, you sort of see it hit him that this officer, this trooper, Corey Mackey, he is not messing around. He's going to follow through with this. And that clip you played right before then, there's this moment where Cocchi, against Mackey's direction, started walking towards the casino, back into the casino. And Mackey put his hand on the sheriff's shoulder softly. Yeah. It wasn't forceful, but then Cocchi stopped. And then this is when you can just see that Cocchi realizes what's going on. And after that, he's like, "You want to go down that road, huh?" Right, which was the Republicans' headline on it. I'd also say there was this part in the video that came from the public records request that I don't think it was featured as much by the Republican, but they did write about it. An awkward exchange where someone in a sheriff's department shirt walks up to the officers and walks up to Cocchi, and he says he's a friend of Cocchi's. And Cocchi says that the friend was the one driving this state-owned vehicle. And the friend's face, like he just gets this blank look on his face, and he says, "What?" And he looks at Cocchi like a deer in headlights, like, what's going down here? And then about 20 seconds later, Cocchi finally tells him that he's just teasing him. And it was, Cocchi had already acknowledged to the officers that he was the one driving the car after initially lying about it. So this was just a really interesting way to see the sheriff treat his friend.
And that was, I don't think it was in those two clips that the Republican posted with its story, but there was the 2 hours or so of video from the various angles, and we also had access to that full video.
Yeah, we requested it months ago. The Republicans stayed on top of it. More credit to Greta Yoakum for doing that, and then we were able to get it later that day.
Paul, what are your thoughts on this?
What stood out to me in watching it was the way the Massachusetts State Police handled it. You know, the Massachusetts State Police has been a scandal magnet for the last decade. And this could have gone very badly for the Massachusetts State Police if they had just given the sheriff a walk, right?
Yep.
I mean, we would have found out about it eventually. There obviously were other witnesses around the casino who must have seen this activity going on. But because of the professional way that the Massachusetts State Police handled it, to their credit, they did it right, and it isn't a black mark on that, another black mark on that agency.
Matt, I'm going to get to you in just a second, but given what Paul just said, I do want to play a clip from Western Mass News reporter Chris Paisano, who spoke with Cocchi this week. And Paisano asked Cocchi if state police acted accordingly and did their jobs in September when he was arrested. Here's Cocchi's response.
Absolutely. I think during this whole process, you have never heard me once utter a word about any agency for doing their job. That's what they're there to do. I believe, ultimately, the only person to blame for that incident on that night is Nick Cocchi, and that's why I've taken full responsibility for it.
And not the first time we've heard Sheriff Cocchi say that he takes full responsibility for this. Matt, what are your thoughts?
Well, I mean, I suppose first of all, with that clip, it's kind of a perfect example of crisis communications. Obviously, the videos reveal that Cocchi perhaps didn't believe that he was necessarily going to have a problem with this on the night that it happened, but afterwards, after this, got out and was, all over the television and all over the media and some of the, visual evidence, I think people tracked down like the tire tracks. There was, clearly a turn for him to make it to survive this, because these are the kinds of scandals that can bring somebody down, even somebody as, that has the stature of the sheriff or whoever the sheriff may be. But he was able to get through it. I mean, despite being, not just a sheriff, not just an elected official, but also, a law enforcement official. Now, are these videos necessarily going to change that? They could. I had remarked to another outlet one time that, this could be something that somebody could use to run against him in the future. But I don't necessarily see everything that's come out this week is any more likely to, raise a chorus of, calls for resignation.
Sheriff is an elected position. 2028 is the next cycle where his seat would be up. So that will certainly remain to be seen. But one place where he could be potentially held accountable outside of the court process, which already has transpired, is the Post Commission, which is the Massachusetts Peace Officer Standards and Training Commission. And Cocchi needs certification from Post to do kind of certain parts of his job. And Post could hold him accountable for this incident beyond those court proceedings that I mentioned. Sam, you checked in with Post this week. What did they have to say? Yeah,
so Post has told us in the past that not all sheriffs are certified, but that the certification is needed if a sheriff is performing certain police official duties. So it's a little unclear overall.
It's a little tricky because not all sheriffs are.
How much power Post has over him. But a sheriff spokesperson says within 48 hours of the arrest in September, as required by law, the sheriff's office did contact Post to let them know what happened about the arrest. And, we followed up with Post. And then Post hasn't followed up with the sheriff's office since then, according to the spokesperson. And I checked, Cocchi is not on the Post list of officers who are currently facing discipline. And I followed up with a spokesperson at the commission to see, are they investigating? Is there anything we should be looking out for? And I got a not unexpected response, quote, "We cannot comment on whether a case has been opened or on any cases that may be pending." So, I mean, it's possible we'll see something like that come into the future. As Matt mentioned, the legal consequences of this for him were over with that incredibly fast plea situation that he had just a few days after his
Back
arrest.
in September. Yeah.
I know we save predictions for the last, but I'll say on
Go
the
for it,
post commission and Cocchi, you'll hear nada zip.
All right, a little spoiler for Paul's upcoming prediction, perhaps, at the end of the show. I'm going to move us on to Franklin County Sheriff Christopher Donlin, just to quickly here. He announced this week that he is retiring. This was first reported by the Greenfield Recorder's Dominic Pauly, who said Christopher J. Donlin has announced he will retire at the end of the month, ending a 14-year tenure that saw Franklin County Jail and House of Corrections transform from a typical facility focused on incarceration to one with a trauma-informed treatment model, which we've seen at other sheriff's agencies, including Hampden County Sheriff's. Anyone surprised by his decision to leave early?
I don't. Surprised. I guess no. I guess not. I'll just say, the few times that I interviewed Sheriff Donlin, it involved his work as one of the founders and leaders of the opioid task force of Franklin County and the North Quabbin region, which was a group that did much to advance the cause of treating the opioid crisis, addressing the opioid crisis in the rural areas of Massachusetts. And you mentioned in your introduction the work that he had done as sheriff in the Franklin County Jail. They were the first to introduce medically assisted addiction treatment in jails in Massachusetts, and this was very controversial
at the time. Absolutely,
very controversial. But now it's something that's become universal. So, congratulations to Sheriff Donlin for being a pioneer there.
Sam, what did the sheriff tell Jill? Some additional details here about his process and why he's leaving now.
Yeah, I mean, this was interesting because I think when any of us think about retirement, and I, think about retirement, of course, occasionally think about retirement. It's not
great, by the way.
Well, it's not unexpected to think or maybe calculate what your pension's going to be, but I think it's unexpected when a politician specifically says that was part of their process. But Donlin told Jill, was really transparent about this, said one reason why he was retiring now, as opposed to waiting until the end of the term, is that his pension was maxed out,
Hey, points for sheer honesty.
Points for sheer honesty. I mean, I would say I don't live in Franklin County. I would say that if you are a voter in Franklin County, maybe you would have wanted the sheriff to make that calculation perhaps before deciding whether to run for another 6-year term. But, points for transparency.
Because he's got another 3 years left on this term, and kind of next steps in how the sausages get made here. Governor Maura Healey is going to appoint an interim sheriff who will hold the seat until 2026 when they can hold a special election, and that person would finish out the remainder of Donlin's terms. All right, I'm going to move us on here. After 2 years, a bill to address faulty concrete crumbles at the deadline. Jim Kinney for the Springfield Republican. Homeowners across Massachusetts whose concrete foundations are failing due to a construction flaw lobbied for 2 years for a law to help them. A drafted bill would have set up an unfunded committee to study ways to help homeowners meet the cost of repair. But the measure crumbled in December. Pun of the week there to Jim Kinney. Thanks so much for that one. Kinney's report goes on to say that he spoke with Springfield State Representative Angelo Pupolo, who was a supporter of the bill, and Pupolo explained that the problem was just too much work there at the end of the session. 2 years of lobbying for this, and no help as of yet. But this discovery of this problem goes back years. Matt, I'm going to go to you on the phone. Surprised that residents are still dangling here without help?
I mean, I guess I'm actually probably not surprised. I mean, because this has been an issue, as you mentioned, that goes back a very long time. Just to give you a sense of how long, just in relative recent memory, it goes back, I wouldn't say it was an issue in a 2018 state rep race, but you had all the candidates for the 2nd Hampden district appearing at an event in Munson on this very subject. Democrat, Republican senators who weren't even, have competitive races at that point. It was huge, and that was, we're not going on 7 years ago, and it wasn't a new problem then either. So unfortunately, I'm not terribly surprised that things like this, can trip and fall at the last minute, especially when you consider what a mad scramble was happening in the legislature literally up until its expiry before the new legislature was sworn in on the 1st. It actually is kind of funny because, not to make this a statewide political thing per se, but both the House Speaker and the Senate President were a little defensive about, how last year's session went. They said they got a lot of work done. 20% of it, I heard one estimate, and maybe that was just an approximation, happened in the 24 hours or week before the session ended.
Hey,
so
we're reporters. We know what deadlines do to folks. I mean, come on.
The Massachusetts legislature still manages to pass the least number of bills of almost any legislature in the country. And the fact that all this bill would have done was form a study committee.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the legislature's default position on anything they don't know what to do with or anything that's remotely controversial. They create a study committee. So I frankly don't understand, as Carrie, you pointed out, it's 2 years. This is a 2-year session with full-time legislators, and we tripped up and lost it and in the 11th hour. I mean,
In Massachusetts,
it's got to be extremely frustrating for the people that are involved in this situation personally with houses that are worthless.
because there's no recourse for them currently from their home insurance.
And the other thing I just quickly point out is that Connecticut's already acted on this. Connecticut a few years ago passed a bill that created a fund that is paid for with
It's a
surcharges
surcharge, right?
on home insurance premiums. Correct.
Yeah.
Is that working? Do we know? Maybe that's what this study committee was supposed to find out. But now, we're back to square one.
And I know some folks who did talk to Jim Kenney, the Republican, are hopeful that maybe Massachusetts would set up something similar as a form of relief. Any thoughts, Sam?
Yeah, as Jim Kenney pointed out, what Massachusetts has done is forward-looking, right? There's a 2023 law. They're doing these regulations on, I think it was described as a licensing procedure for concrete, and they're starting the public comment period on that, I think this week, as Jim pointed out. But that doesn't help the folks who already are sitting in these houses. I remember I was telling Paul back when I bought my house with my wife, these stories were coming out. I found it terrifying.
Absolutely.
I mean, the whole idea that you're investing so much of your life into this thing and then its value can be potentially worthless with no recourse, that's terrifying.
And the other issue that may be going on here, too, is that I think this may have been pointed out in Jim Kenney's story, is that it is not a problem that has surfaced in greater Boston as yet.
Which I think is a question for another time that I definitely would want to delve into. Is this an East-West thing? If this is happening in Eastern Mass...
It's always an East-West thing, Carrie.
Yep.
Well, State Rep Peter Durant says he is going to refile this bill, so we'll probably talk about it here again on the Rundown. We're going to take a quick break. Still ahead, 2 stories related to the environment with 2 questions. What 413 city is considering a ban on fossil fuels in new construction? And where are 2,400 acres of land being preserved? Come back for the answers here on the Rundown. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Rundown. I'm Carrie Saldo, joined by Sam Hudzig, Matt Safransky, and Paul Tudhill. Let's jump back into it, gentlemen. Ban on fossil fuels in new Northampton buildings sent on to City Council, rather. This reporting from the Daily Hampshire Gazette's Alexandra McDougall. A measure to effectively ban the use of fossil fuels in all new buildings and renovation projects citywide is advancing to the full City Council. Under the proposed new building code set to take effect on January 27th, pending Council approval, all new buildings or renovations to existing buildings would be required to be all electric, with any use of fossil fuels prohibited. The council is expected to take up the ordinance later this month. Matt, you're often covering the machinations of city government. Where do you see this proposal in Northampton heading?
Well, I mean, I think if it's going to pass anywhere in Western Massachusetts, it's going to be somewhere like Northampton, maybe Amherst. I'm not sure there's necessarily the same impetus to get up to 50% plus one of any given city council in any other communities. Maybe Pittsfield, but even that might be a stretch. I think the big question that's going to come up, though, or at least should come up, is are there going to be other efforts to make building generally more easily, and that is directly related to the building code in terms of heating and electricity and whether there be fossil fuels used in the building, but zoning. And Northampton has made some efforts, but I'm sure that there's a lot more they could do to make it easier to build. Northampton's a very desirable place for people to live. And if they're going to make it a little bit more expensive to build housing, and it's of course important to reduce the footprint of carbon and try to reduce climate change, but if they're going to do that, they need to find other ways to help make the housing more available, more economic for people too.
And I should say it's not whole hog, right? There are some exceptions. There are going to be some like-for-like replacements. If you currently have something that's using fossil fuels, you could swap it out. There's some exemptions for historic buildings. So a few details there. But also Northampton is part of this larger pilot project across the state that's got 10 communities in it. And this is the only Western Mass community that's likely to be in it. And the pilot program made kind of huge news last year because Mayor Wu in Boston had been pushing, as part of her, even when she ran for mayor, to push for no fossil fuels in buildings in Boston. And then she had to walk it back because it just didn't seem feasible in terms of like whether the electric grid is there and a lot of different challenges. Do you see any of that holding up this potential for Northampton?
For Northampton, no. As far as Boston not participating in it, I'll point out that Cambridge is participating in it. And so you already have a large, densely populated urban area in the eastern part of the state that's participating in it. I'm glad that we have a community in Western Massachusetts that decided to participate. This is a pilot program. The idea of pilot programs is obviously you take a small sample, you analyze the data, and then you see if you can expand it out and whatever changes need to be made. I also noted that there were one environmentalist, I don't remember exactly who said it, but one environmentalist noted that this is really low-hanging fruit as well. The real challenge in addressing climate change is getting existing buildings to go off fossil fuels. And, that's a longer-term, much more complicated situation than dealing with new constructions and total renovations.
And go ahead, Sam.
If I could just very briefly, to Paul's point, that means, ideally, when somebody's water heater or furnace goes, it would get replaced by electric. That would be the ideal. That's not what these kinds of or building code changes would do.
No,
and I should point out, too, that as a result of a climate law beginning this month, Mass Save, which is the
it's an incentive
energy
program that helps you
conservation,
out. Yeah.
right? They will no longer do rebates and incentives to replace a fossil fuel equipment with another piece of fossil fuel equipment.
I did not know that was going away. Sam Hudzik.
Yeah,
that's gone away.
I just want to focus on something Paul said before, just about this being part of a pilot program, the statewide pilot program. I mean, the point here is to find the flaws, right? The point here, the reason that it's not like a statewide mandate or anything like that, is that there are going to be things that are going to come up, some that people have already foreshadowed are going to be issues in the public comment in that committee, and other things that they hadn't thought about, good things and bad things. And I actually think that's good policymaking. I think this idea that we're not rushing right into something on this, we're going to give this some time to sort of see how it shakes out in these communities. And, Massachusetts, Northampton competed in order to get approval for this. So this is something that's been in the works for a while.
They weren't in the first cut. So,
exactly.
they did end up
and then
making...
I think they beat out Somerville. Is that right?
I think Somerville or Lincoln dropped out, something like that. Okay, well, I'm going to move us on. A $20 million deal with New Hampshire Timber Company will preserve 2,400 acres in 7 communities. That was the headline on Scott Merzbach's story in the Daily Hampshire Gazette this week. A New Hampshire Timber Company has purchased nearly 2,400 acres in 7 communities in Hampshire and Franklin counties, acquiring some parcels. It was a $20 million process, including a little over 1,000 acres in Belchertown and 944 acres in Pelham, considered among the largest unprotected contiguous forested tracts in Massachusetts. And the properties were purchased by the Lime Timber Company. Lime Timber says it's working with the Kestrel Land Trust and the trustees of reservation to keep the properties open to the public for recreation, to protect them for wildlife habitat, climate resiliency, water benefits. Is the panel going to be out there hiking to and fro on these 2,400 acres? What are our thoughts?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I have gone hiking on some of the conservation land in western Massachusetts, and there's a lot of it, and it's really beautiful, and it is enjoyable to get out there. So good on the people that were able to put all of this together. It'll have many benefits, as you mentioned, helping to wildlife and promoting cleaner air and water.
It might be a bit cold for hiking like right now.
I didn't mean right. I didn't mean right this minute.
Very
in the
bold of you, Paul.
spring.
When I saw the stories, I thought that was great. It seemed like a really innovative project, an innovative way to get this, to make sure that this land stayed protected. And I wanted to go and explore these places. I was like zeroing in on the map on the Gazette, and I was like, I think I've been on the Robert Frost Trail before, which part of this is included in that, but I don't think I've been in that specific section.
And then there's the Holland Glen Waterfalls, which I had not heard of. That's part of this. It's one of the Belchertown properties, and apparently it's a 1.1 mile loop according to alltrails.com. So I'm targeting that one.
I didn't know that. I didn't know about that either.
I mean, there's so much really interesting stuff about forest policy and timber and how that interacts with climate change and stored carbon and all that. So I think it's a very interesting area of policy that we've seen the state do a lot of interesting stuff on in the last few years, and activists feel very strongly about it, and so do timber companies, of course. But it's nice to see everybody sort of coming together on this one project.
Absolutely. Hey, Matt, how about for you?
I am glad that there's conservation, but I am an indoor cat. I probably won't be out there anytime soon.
I love it. I love it. And an update to a different forest land story out in the Berkshires. We discussed a couple of months ago, the Berkshire Eagle. We talked about this controversial forest management plan around the Notch. And Sam, you kind of tipped a hat to it, just the push-pull between timber companies and also conservation and what the best way is for both of those things to coexist. And there was a lot of public opposition to this plan. Ultimately, Mayor Jennifer Maxey said that the city is going to halt the project, including the logging portion that was proposed near the Notch River watershed, which got a lot of public attention and had a lot of people concerned. This was reporting from Sten Spinella, and you can check out his story at berkshireeagle.com. All right. Paul tipped it earlier. We're going to do predictions, scoops, and praises. It's where we ask our panel to make a prediction about the news, as Paul did for us. Give us a scoop on a story they're working on, or heap some praise on a bit of news here or there. Sam Hudzig, I'll start with you. Prediction, scoop, praise?
I got praise. I'd like to praise the reporters who've been staying on top of the Sheriff Cocchi story. He's apologized, as we've heard. He's been sentenced. But an elected official drove drunk for several miles through West Springfield and Springfield, including a mile and a half through downtown Springfield on nothing but a bare rim, and then lied to police about it. So the public deserves to know the full story. Greta Yoakum stayed on the Mass State Police and made sure that those videos got released. So I give props to her and Adam Frenier from NEPM as well for continuing to report on it.
Excellent. How about for you, Matt Safransky, there on the phone? Prediction, scoop, praise?
My prediction is the Obscure Asset Management Board will approve the lease for the new courthouse in Springfield that has been proposed and was the subject of some news reporting. However, I will add to that, I think that given some of the public feedback, you're going to see a little more scrutiny from state officials as that process moves beyond that, because there's obviously concerns that it might not go where someplace that would be conducive to a lot of values and needs in downtown Springfield.
And that's been a big story here in Camden County. The building was shuttered for a while because there was questions about whether or not the air quality was sufficient and whether or not employees there were getting sick. And there was some, oh no, that it wasn't. And then yes, they were, and they were going to renovate. And now it's potential they were going to build a brand new building. And now this is the latest sort of in that process. And it's certainly going to continue. And Matt, you're among the reporters who are going to keep watching it for us. Paul Tudhill, scoop, prediction,
I don't have any scoops. I don't have any predictions. I'll just take this opportunity to wish everybody a happy Quitters Day today.
Happy Quitters Day.
Happy Quitters Day.
Tell me more about this.
The second Friday in January is the day everybody quits their New Year's resolutions. I didn't make any, so I have nothing to quit.
I made one New Year's resolution when I worked at the Berkshire Eagle the first year. They wanted all the reporters to do a New Year's resolution. I resolved that year to balance my checkbook.
Hey.
I still to this day have never once done it. It seems a very antiquated idea now. I do in fact know my father-in-law balances his checkbook. I have praise this week for the Berkshire Eagles' Claire O'Callahan. Her story taught me that since 2007, the Rockefeller Center Christmas tree isn't just fed to goats or whatever you do to destroy Christmas trees these days. It's actually repurposed. The wood is donated to Habitat for Humanity, and they use it in the building of homes. I guess this year it's going to be stair treads in some homes, and it's going to come back to the Berkshires. So it's a full circle thing for the Rockefeller Christmas tree. It came from the Berkshires. It's coming back.
Very nice.
All right. My thanks to Sam Hudzig, Paul Tudhill, and Matt Safransky. This is The Rundown. See you next week.